Chapter 3. Did you hear the news? Paula leaned over Layla's table 3 spots away, but her loud voice carried across the interior of the small eatery. The diner was known for 2 things, Max's amazing food and being the hub of gossip, though Max hated that everyone congregated in his establishment to share news. "No, but everyone will now, Paula," Max said with a raised voice from the front where he was wiping the bar counter after the lunch rush. Paula shot him a dirty look before turning back to Layla. "Audrey McAllister is back in town." Blake's pulse stopped at the mention of Audrey's name. He placed his coffee on the tabletop and leaned forward to eavesdrop on the conversation. "And she has a baby," Paula continued. As quickly as it flourished, the happiness in his heart fizzled, as if doused with water. If Audrey had a baby, then a husband probably existed as well. "That's nice," Layla responded. "I'm glad she's happy." Paula's eyebrow arched up her face, and she jammed her hands on her thick waist as she shook her head. "I didn't say she was happy. The rumor is her man dumped her, and she came home for financial assistance." Blake's heart lifted with the news Audrey was free, but a twinge of sadness remained for the hardships she must have faced. "Well, the past is the past," the ever-enigmatic Layla said as she smiled up at Paula. She often avoided conflict and chose the higher road. "I say we welcome her with open arms and remind her what a great town Star Lake is." Paula had the decency to look abashed as she squared her shoulders. Her nose tilted in the air and her dark hair swirled with the flick of her head. "Of course we will. I'm sure we'll see her around, as the word is she rented a place in town and will be working for her father." Blake's eyes dropped to his coffee to conceal his excitement. Audrey McAllister was not only back in town, but she would be working at her father's office, the same office he entered every day. Though he had been too shy to tell her his feelings in high school, perhaps now he would find the courage. Audrey set Caden's car seat on the living room carpet and glanced around the small house. The odor of paint still hung in the air, along with the scent of carpet cleaner. Though not huge, the 2-bedroom house was in good shape, though bland, with tan wall-to-wall carpet and white walls. The kitchen continued the theme with white laminate flooring and brown cabinets. "Well, Caden, it isn't much, but this is home for now," she whispered down to the sleeping infant. Tomorrow she would have to get furniture, a crib for sure, a bed for her, some chairs and a table, but tonight they would sleep on the blankets she had brought from her old apartment. Blankets, clothes, and baby necessities were about all she had been able to bring on the plane. She added furniture and groceries to her mental to-do list, along with a cheap car. Audrey had sold hers to help pay for plane tickets. The sheer enormity of the growing list elicited a sigh from her as Caden continued to sleep. Jealous of his lack of responsibility, she tiptoed out of the house to grab the blankets and clothes from the car. When the bags were all inside, exhaustion settled on her shoulders and Audrey yawned. She wanted to curl into a ball and sleep for a week, but she knew it wasn't a possibility. Her internal censor told her Caden would be up soon to eat, and after that, she was sure sleep would be slow in coming, as sleeping on the floor had never worked well for her. The morning light peeked in the open curtains early the next morning. Curtains or blinds, she would need those too. Audrey tried to squint her eyes shut, but it was no use. Her stomach growled in frustration. She'd have to get up soon to feed it. At least she had thought to make a quick stop at the market downtown yesterday, and coffee and cereal waited for her in the kitchen. Stretching her arms, she tried to work the kinks out of her neck. The hard floor had taken a toll on her body, and every joint crackled in agony. Caden laid spread eagle beside her. He had woken like clockwork every 2 hours to eat, but thankfully he'd fallen back asleep quickly each time. With as little noise as possible, Audrey struggled to her feet. A shooting pain spiraled down her back as she tried to stand upright, and she leaned back to stretch the knot out. When her shoulders returned to their normal position, she tiptoed into the kitchen to make her breakfast before Caden awoke. The bright white of the kitchen hurt her tired eyes, and she squinted them shut as she rummaged through the bag from the market. She hadn't picked up much, but small plastic bowls, a mug, and spoons had been at the top of her list. Cereal and coffee were staples in her life. She ran the bowl under hot water to clean it, wishing she had remembered soap yesterday at the store. Another item she would have to add to the list for today's trip. Along with paper towels, she realized as she turned off the water and waved the bowl in the air to dry it off. Coffee, that was what she needed. A nice steaming mug of the hot liquid would kick her brain back into gear. But as she turned around, she realized she hadn't picked up a coffee maker either. With a sigh, she grabbed the cereal from the bag and filled the bowl before adding the milk from the very bare fridge. She'd have to make a caffeine stop, or she wouldn't make it the rest of the day. Caden woke as Audrey placed the rinsed-out bowl in the sink. After feeding him, she ran a quick brush through her long blonde hair before piling it onto her head in a loose ponytail. She needed a shower in the worst way, but she had to tackle this list first. After changing out of last night's clothes into a sweater and a pair of jeans, the temperature was much cooler here than in California. She loaded Caden up in the car. Her first stop was the Goodwill on the outskirts of town. Most of the groceries she could get at the general store in Star Lake, but they wouldn't have the furniture she needed. Luck was with her as she found a sturdy crib, a comfortable couch and bed frame, a decent dining room table, and a few scratched tables. The store even agreed to deliver the items later that afternoon for a nominal fee and gave her the name of someone they knew selling a gently used mattress. After buckling Caden in again, she pointed the car back to Star Lake's downtown. The diner was sure to have coffee. Whether it would taste good was another matter, but she doubted Star Lake had built a Starbucks, or any other coffee joint for that matter. In fact, she doubted much had changed about the downtown at all. Star Lake seemed to live in its own bubble, away from time and passing trends. Few cars lined the street as she pulled into a spot in front of the diner. As she grabbed Caden's car seat from the back, she noticed a new shop across the way, Sweet Treats Bakery. Maybe a few things have changed. If the diner's coffee is terrible, perhaps this new place will have a decent cup. The bell chimed overhead as she pushed open the front door. A man with slicked brown hair and a checkered shirt sat reading a newspaper at the back booth, while Max filled ketchup bottles at the front. Though 5 or 6 years older than she, Audrey had harbored a secret crush on the broody owner through high school. Max glanced up as she approached the counter. "Well, I'll be. Audrey McAllister. The rumor mill said you were back in town." A growth of stubble gave him a rugged look, and Audrey's heart fluttered in her chest. She placed Caden's car seat on the tile floor beside her before climbing onto the bar stool. "Hey, Max, it's good to see you. Let me guess, Paula?" She had taken a few dance classes with Paula in high school, and she remembered the busty woman often sharing tidbits of gossip. "Who else?" he asked with a crooked half-grin. Audrey had never seen Max's actual smile. "Can I get you something? The breakfast rush just ended, but I could whip something up for you." Audrey waved her hand, not wanting him to make a fuss for her. "I had cereal, but I could go for a cup of coffee." With a swift nod, Max grabbed a mug from under the counter and poured in the murky black liquid. "I don't have any fancy creamer if you wanted that. Presley, across the street, does more of the frou-frou coffee." He placed a cup of milk and a canister of sugar on the counter. "Is she the owner of the bakery?" Audrey asked, looking over her shoulder in the direction. "Yep. She moved back a few months ago. Evidently she studied in Paris for a time, but it didn't work out. She makes good pastries, too." "Moved back? So she lived here before?" Curiosity at meeting anyone else who had left town and come back burgeoned inside her. Perhaps it would help her feel less like a failure. Yeah, Layla said she was a few years behind us in school, so she'd have been a few years ahead of you, I guess. I don't really remember her. Max shrugged and returned to filling the ketchup bottles. You still keep in touch with Layla? Audrey tried to keep her voice even. She had known, even back in high school, that one reason Max was still single was that he adored the pretty Layla Matthews. Actually, Layla and I are together now. His hazel eyes pierced hers, and one side of his lip pulled up in a crooked smile, probably the closest thing he could do to a real one. There was no mistaking the pride in his voice, and Audrey swallowed her disappointment. That's wonderful, Max. I'm thrilled for you. As she turned her attention to the coffee to hide her reaction, he finished filling the bottles and took them out to the tables. When her coffee was empty and she felt a little more awake, Audrey plunked down a $5 bill, grabbed Caden's car seat, and walked back to her car. He woke just as she snapped him in, so she climbed in the back seat next to him, pulled a bottle from her bag, and fed him. She had never gotten him to nurse and had been forced to settle on bottles. After Caden finished, Audrey climbed into the front seat. Though it would be a quick walk to the market, the heavy carrier made driving more appealing. The general store parking lot was also mostly empty, as most people were at work. Audrey was glad. If Max and Layla had stayed in town, then peers she went to school with might have as well, and she wasn't ready to face them yet. After grabbing a cart and placing Caden's carrier in it, Audrey entered the store. A young, freckled-faced checker greeted her as she passed, and she flashed a small wave before continuing to the produce section. She piled bags of apples, oranges, lettuce, and peppers in her cart. She might no longer be in health-conscious Los Angeles, but she still wanted to regain her pre-baby figure. The extra 20 pounds she carried around now was a source of embarrassment and a hindrance on her outfits. Not to mention it was a constant reminder of why Tony, Caden's father, had left her. As Audrey reached for a bunch of bananas, she heard a male voice speak her name. Turning, she spied a sandy-haired man with chiseled features and warm brown eyes. Though he looked vaguely familiar, she could not place how she knew him. Audrey McAllister? Is that you? His deep, rich voice flowed over her ears like silk. Yes, it's me. She paused, racking her brain one more time for a name. I'm sorry, I feel I should know you, but... She shrugged, letting the sentence trail off without an ending. The corner of his lip twitched, forming a playful smile and highlighting a dimple in his left cheek. Blake Dalton. We went to school together, though I doubt you would remember me. She wrinkled her forehead, running through the boys she knew in school. The name didn't belong to anyone who had run in her immediate circle, but an image of the skinny class president in glasses flashed in her mind. Her eyes widened as she made the connection. He looked so different, so handsome. Blake laughed at her reaction. Yeah, I get that a lot. I worked out in college and put on some muscle. My job helps too. Oh, what do you do? Audrey asked, visions of him modeling parading through her mind. He blinked at her and tilted his head. You don't know? I work for your father. I'm on his construction crew. Oh, I haven't spoken to my father yet. I just got into town 2 days ago. A twinkle lit Blake's eyes as he nodded. Yes, I heard that. From Paula? They finished together and exchanged smiles before the awkward silence descended. Well, I'll let you get back to your shopping. I have to get back, but I'd love to catch up sometime. He nodded at her. I'd love that too. As she watched him walk away, she couldn't help but admire how the years had treated him.